I just hit 2,000 subscribers, so I want to say a special thanks to everyone for watching my videos. You're all awesome and it's great to read your comments. So this weekend I tried something new in collaboration with all of you, making Star Wars analysis videos in my usual style, but using topics provided by you, with the scripts written entirely by an AI trained on transcripts of my previous videos. I had originally planned on just making the video for whatever topic received the most votes on my post, but since there were only 4 comments in the end and I was curious how they would turn out, I went ahead and made all of them, plus 1 bonus from my own ideas of course. The videos will be in order of how many votes they got on the original post, with the most popular first and my own topic coming last. I've also put timestamps in the description so you can easily navigate through the different AI generated videos. But now let's get into the fascinating madness that is Star Wars analysis written by a robot. I hope you find it fun and interesting. Don't worry if it doesn't make much sense, I guarantee that it won't. But let me know your favorite lines by the AI in the comments below. There are some interesting ones. It's a fun ride, so grab your popcorn, sit back, and be prepared for some highly questionable Star Wars analysis. And thanks again for subscribing. The AI-generated video topic that got the most votes was posted by Jacob Paul. Why Maclunkey is the key to Darth Jar Jar's rise. For anyone unfamiliar, Maclunkey is a new alien word in Huttese Greedo says to Han in the latest version of the original Star Wars on Disney+. Just one more unnecessary addition to that scene. It's basically a meme now, which is why combining it with the Darth Jar Jar theory made this such a great topic idea. In Star Wars A New Hope, Greedo saying Maclunkey to Han Solo is actually the beginning of Darth Jar Jar Binks' rise as a Sith Lord. In the original trilogy, he's the second to the last Sith apprentice of Darth Maul, with only Jabba the Hutt ever receiving more screen time. But there's a reason Jar Jar is so hated. The dark side worked in a way that no Force powers had ever done before. It was an extension of the physical training that they had all done together. It was more obvious than usual. Anakin does Force push in the prequels, but it's a lot less obvious than Jar Jar's secret powers. And despite the fact that he doesn't go so far with his Sithism in the Clone Wars, it's a perfect addition to the story. Now, before I finish this section, I'd like to point something out. For those of you who don't watch Star Wars The Clone Wars, I'm about to admit that I hate it and it's not really worth watching. But I've also watched it 10 times, and it's great. I highly recommend it. And I would agree that the problem with Jar Jar was that he added a new variable to Force powers. I don't remember if Anakin had been Force pushed in the prequels, but I doubt it. And I don't know if the dark side would be the same without the Force pushing, but as far as the dark side goes, Jar Jar adds a new power that lets Palpatine add a new power that lets Darth Vader add a new power, and none of this even requires extra training. Wow, so much dark side. Which brings us to the end of the saga. The Force Awakens... The Force Awakens is This is hard to read, but it's great. The Force Awakens is Force pushing its way closer and closer to its epic conclusion. Anakin's love story, Anakin and Ahsoka's relationship, Darth Vader's resurrection. It's filled with elements that make the Force a dominant power in the story, but it still manages to take a huge step back in the storytelling power of Force powers. It's a delicate balance. Everything is a delicate balance. The Force is a delicate balance. Yoda. Everything needs to be back where it started, or the episode just wouldn't be worth it. And when a trilogy reaches the end, the arc needs to be complete. Without some kind of key power, the episodes fall flat. It's difficult to put my finger on exactly what it is. It's not that we didn't expect the Force to be omnipresent, but it wasn't like it had been in the previous 2 movies. But the interesting thing about this is that the biggest impact of Greedo saying Maclunkey on Jar Jar was the audience wanting to see Jar Jar get killed. We don't care about the entire character, we just want him dead. That's how powerful the Force is. The Force gave Anakin immense power, but it was channeled, it was all about balance. This is also the reason that the Force brought back Darth Vader from the dead, and why Luke's hand is magically attached. Anakin brought balance to the Force, and then Luke just lost it. But Darth Jar Jar mastered it with the magic of Maclunkey. If you want to see a more detailed analysis of Jar Jar's Force powers in the films, check out my other videos on this topic. The visual effects are great, but one thing that I do have to nitpick was that the holograms were supposed to be transparent, but they clearly were not. the camera angle also makes it very hard to see Jar Jar's face. The prequels were the first films that used Force powers in a clear way, with very unique results. The Force let Jar Jar know what it's like to be an idiot, and that is a superpower. We saw that in The Phantom Menace, but now this is something different. It feels like the Force is exploding and dark side. It feels like the Force is forcing Jar Jar to say something. Maclunkey. And that ending, wow, can you even believe it? The Rey twist was absolutely brilliant. I'm sure that Maclunkey is the only thing that makes her epiphany make any sense. We finally get some resolution to the Force problem, of how things are supposed to work. Greedo's Maclunkey gives us a clear understanding of why the Force doesn't want people to exist. It brings the Force into its own box, which allows the trilogy to have a nice conclusion. A Force box of mysteries. And I'm really happy with that. The prequels added amazing characters to the mix. Darth Vader was an excellent villain. He was a brilliant character, and Darth Vader was a fantastic character. But the storyline was still unclear. We didn't really understand why he was a bad guy, and Anakin felt like a terrible person. He did terrible things and he never felt good about it. The trilogy makes him feel like a tragic figure. I really like it though. I think they've brought it all together in the best way possible. But for the case of Jar Jar and Greedo, I think they missed the mark at the end, and it makes it really hard to watch. But that's okay. Story endings are allowed to be hard, and maybe for some people it works for the overall story. But that's not what we came for. We came for great characters and great stories. Maybe only 10 people came for Maclunkey, but they did it anyway. Good storytelling is hard to find, especially for the poor, powerful Darth Jar Jar Binks. So this next AI-generated deep dive comes from Prosthetic Quilt. How Palpatine knew he was going to die in Return of the Jedi in The Phantom Menace, plan out his survival, and then have his final order in The Rise of Skywalker. Long titles lead to lots for the AI to chew on, so let's take a look at how it did. Palpatine knew he was going to die in Return of the Jedi way back in The Phantom Menace, because sometime in the third act of that movie, if you watch carefully, you can see Palpatine is in a secret meeting with Snoke, Leia, and Mace Windu. And Snoke says, "Look out to the future, you son of a gun. There's Kylo Ren." I mean, he didn't have to say that. Any of them could have walked out of that meeting, but at the end of Return of the Jedi, I don't think there's anyone who believes he could survive. And considering that the end of Return of the Jedi is absolutely driven by the movie that is Return of the Jedi, it doesn't feel right to not make the Return of the Jedi end with the Jedi returning, if you know what I mean. What? That being said, I think this line almost didn't happen. The first line in that meeting was when Luke says, "I'm not supposed to speak," which had a lot of potential if Palpatine had actually died. When Snoke says, "Look out, you son of a gun," that was originally going to be, "I'm not supposed to speak either." But that line didn't really seem to be the most exciting way to end the movie, so George Lucas let Snoke talk, which was good. But Snoke's claim of responsibility for Luke's fall had a lot of resonance to the original trilogy. Both Obi-Wan and Yoda seem to have let Luke take the fall for their errors in thinking, which further suggests that Palpatine did, in fact, personally kill Luke's father as part of his big plan. In The Phantom Menace, you see Palpatine plotting for the rise of the First Order, when he gathers the whole galaxy together for a big council of lords. As we all remember from that great moment, Palpatine confidently gets up in front of the galaxy and says,
"I would like to remind all these lords of their part in our future as the warrior planners. I would like to make one thing clear. We, the Sith, and the Jedi, and the farmers are not people. We are a group. We are drivers. Ooh, drivers. It is now time to join our brethren to begin our search for balance, to bring order to the universe. For we have found something we believe is much greater than us. There will be a First Order someday, but it is a secret. Please do not tell this secret or it will not be a secret. Thank you for listening. Now go home.
Well, in short, Palpatine is saying that the rise of the First Order is inevitable there, and the war between the three groups is meant to prepare the galaxy for the final war to end the conflict. When Palpatine talks to Yoda at the end of the prequels about the future of the galaxy, we don't hear him say, Force lightning and the return of the Jedi, but rather, Force lightning and the return of the Jedi. Yes, the AI really wrote that. As an obvious reference to Luke, we can assume that Palpatine meant for the Jedi to return later in first form as a new apprentice. It's actually a slightly subtle hint because of that last line that Yoda says in Revenge of the Farmers.
In the end, only one thing left I have, to face you, and to make the First Order become the Second Order. Darth Sidious, Palpatine is. But Palpatine does not know how to make the good army. Only Yoda, the good army, has. First Order, Second Order. Too many orders. Focus on the Force, you should.
See, the Dark Plagueis prophecy says that one member of the light side, who does not have a name, will make a pact with the dark side and rule the galaxy. That's Force lightning and the return of the Jedi for you. But why, if that's the final war, is it not that the Jedi will return maybe? Huh? In the saga, as far as we know, the Jedi have not regained the strength that they had back when Yoda and the original Jedi came to power, so there doesn't seem to be much of a chance that Palpatine is talking about that. It makes much more sense for the Jedi to come back when there is a First Order. Not a Second Order, not a Fifth Order. I'm talking about the interpretation that Palpatine was only using the dark side because it makes the story more interesting. The light side is just very, very boring to watch. In the saga, there are only ever two great dark side masters. Palpatine was one of them, while Darth Sidious was the other. The Sith were dying off before Palpatine became Emperor, and Vader did not have a happy ending. So Palpatine needed to make a backup plan called the First Order. Surviving the Death Star was the easy part. He just had to seed the galaxy with many tiny Supreme Leader Snokes, probably to make it seem like the end of the story was the end of the saga. But actually, the franchise goes on forever. Now, the third AI-generated video was proposed by Naomi, on the topic all of Luke's Force powers. The AI took it upon itself to write them all as a list, and as you might expect, things get progressively stranger as it goes on. So, here's the list of all Luke's Force powers as written by the AI. Also, note that according to the AI's title it gave to the list, these are only a few of Luke Skywalker's many, many, many Force powers in Star Wars. A few of Luke's many, many, many Force powers in Star Wars. Force Push, Force Pull, Force Lightning, Force Sprint, Force Push and Pull, Force Push and Pull and Throw, Force Leap, Force Push and Pull and Jump and Bolt, Force Thrust, Force Leap and Dash, Force Flail, Force Fade, Force Pull and Lightning, Force Tether, Force Release, Force Absorb and Healing, Force Unsticking / Magnetic Pull / Jump / Bolt, Force Storm / Force Wind / Thrust I can't even read this one. Force Storm / Force Wind / Thrust / Bolt. That's a tongue twister. Force Recall, Force Lock, Force Unlock the Force Unlock the door of the starship, Force Chicken, Force Static, Force Capture, Unsettle using a Force Beam, Force Chain, Force Strike, Force Triple Check, Force Quadruple Check, Force Chill, Force Explosion with Fire, Force Hold, Force Hug, Force Displacement, Force Magnetic Beams of Lasers, interesting, Force Breath, Force Magic, Reverse Force Choke. What is that? Okay. Force your way through the big wall. Also, to cap it off, Force, just Force. So thank you AI for that fantastic description of Luke's Force powers. Alright, so the fourth video request came from Jan Bismarck. I assume this request was playing off the video I made ranking all of Padme's outfits with my wife. And someday we probably will get around to making a sequel where we rank Leia's outfits. But for now, please enjoy the AI's unique take on Princess Leia's outfits. So I recently rewatched the Star Wars original trilogy and ranked all of Leia's outfits. I was inspired by my friend, Luke Skywalker, who's done an amazing series ranking every superhero ever. But there's something inherently frustrating about ranking outfits for movies. I feel like costumes in movies are supposed to be special fancy costumes, or for more dramatic movies, jumpsuits. So I tried to keep the Luke and Leia outfits more or less intact from the movies in this analysis. It was a little harder than I expected because if you watch the movies, you get a much better understanding of what exactly Leia was actually wearing, and somehow her clothes are even more complicated than Darth Vader's suit. Also, Leia has an amazing wardrobe in the original trilogy, but I thought it was a big mistake for her to dress as Boba Fett in the sequel trilogy. But hey, at least Leia can steal things from the big bounty hunter. That's like a superpower. Leia is actually Superman. Princess Leia's most interesting outfit is definitely her evil acolyte outfit. No one really knows how it got there, but it seems like it was an original costume for Leia, but then Carrie Fisher realized it would work on Darth Vader as well, so they both dressed as Night Sisters together. And that was really cool. Also, I thought it was very interesting that Vader doesn't actually call Leia princess, but Ben Kenobi always calls her student. I'm not sure which is worse. At first, I was wondering if this meant Vader was secretly teaching her how to be an assassin, but then I realized the secret, that actually everyone calls her student, even though no one is actually teaching her anything. But then, someone online suggested that she could only be pretending that she's helping Vader and the other secret acolytes, like she did in Return of the Jedi, but that really doesn't fit into the timeline. I'll admit, the idea of putting Leia in disguise to disguise herself as Watto so that Vader doesn't suspect her of being a spy was a pretty cool idea though. But by far, my most favorite Princess Leia outfit was her wedding dress. Leia got married during the Battle of Endor, and she was wearing this gorgeous wedding dress with the stormtroopers. The costume designer famously went over the material for this dress with a fine-toothed comb and hand-dyed it blood red. I'm really a big fan of this dress. It's just good formal wear. I myself prefer wearing a tuxedo, but each person has their own costume designer and Jawa's our fish, so that's that. Leia may not be wearing a cool tuxedo, but at least the dress looks pretty good. Great job by the costume designers on Endor. Lando's friend would be proud. And now, last but not least, this final AI-generated video comes from my own idea. I wanted to celebrate how far the channel's come and celebrate reaching 2,000 subscribers, so I had the AI try its hand at recreating one of my favorite ongoing series, 5 Hidden Details in Star Wars. Number 1. The Fight for Tatooine. Remember that moment when Obi-Wan takes Rey to where her parents were killed, and then he forces her to listen to Darth Maul's recording to prepare her for what she might face in the cave? But before he goes with her, he reveals to her that the Force gives her a choice.
You can bring balance to the Force, or you can become a tool of the dark side. This is how young people perish. Do not become a frog. Frogs do not have fun. The light side is much better, and Darth Vader is a bad guy. Do not be a frog. Please, become a fish instead.
It's a dark and dangerous path, but also an opportunity to overcome the dark side's influence. Well, the Sith are one of the most popular themes in that galaxy far, far away, and Darth Maul is definitely the poster child for the dark side. But in a surprising move in The Phantom Menace, it was actually Obi-Wan who told the audience that there was still some good in the Sith. So, the power for good and evil didn't come out of thin air for Rey. It was handed down to her by Obi-Wan after her parents' death. As wise advice. Do not become the frog. It is time to be a fish. Number 2. Luke's lightsaber. A really common item in the Star Wars universe are lightsabers, and even though we don't see too many of them in The Last Jedi, they certainly do appear at times. In fact, one of the most common objects seen throughout the movie is the lightsaber. However, when Luke and Rey meet up, Luke has a different weapon on him, a very different one. It's actually Obi-Wan's lightsaber. As Obi-Wan was handpicked by Luke to be his teacher, and Obi-Wan told Luke that one of the lessons he would be teaching Luke was how to use a lightsaber, during that time he actually gave Luke a real lightsaber at the beginning of A New Hope, but he switched it to a fake one after he thought that Luke was a bad Jedi. This is further emphasized when Luke is greeted by Yoda, who hands Luke a new lightsaber, but the new lightsaber is only a pair of sandals. Yoda mentions that Luke should use the lightsaber like a master would, so of course, Yoda later gives Luke his own lightsaber, which is actually just another replica of Obi-Wan's lightsaber from Darth Vader's castle. I don't really have much to say here other than how cool it is to me that Luke actually has another fake lightsaber. There are so many lightsabers floating around, things are crazy. Star Wars is crazy. The original saber was given to Obi-Wan by the Jedi Order, but I don't think that Luke ever really had a real lightsaber. He's just not qualified for fighting without his sandals. Number 3. Barriss Offee. When we first get our first look at Barriss Offee, she's already been in conversation with one of the biggest and most frightening villains in Star Wars history. Back on Tatooine, Barriss was a junk dealer who had to decide whether or not to sell the beautiful, innocent, and incredible BB-8. Eventually, she decided not to sell him, despite the fact that she's more than eager to get out of her cage and explore the galaxy, and she wants a lot of money. The Force is the Force, but money is sometimes to be rich. But when Barriss is on Cloud City, she sells her battle droid to Starkiller, and it's here that we see another moment of great peril for Rey. Barriss doesn't just kill Starkiller after the deal and leave Rey to die. No, Barriss sacrifices herself by attacking Starkiller, which allows Rey to use her abilities to deactivate Starkiller's shield, and then, spoiler alert, to deactivate Starkiller by pressing his off switch. I think Barriss makes an interesting villain because she's a hardened human villain, but sympathetic in that she's a victim of circumstances that make her into what she is. Barriss is someone born into bad circumstances who lost her family due to the Galactic Empire. She's a victim of the dark side's corruption, but she's also someone actually good at shuffleboard in her own right. Her powers go deep in the Force. She's a victim of the dark side, but she isn't exactly on the dark side. She's actually somewhere in the middle, and the dark side thinks it's destroying her, but actually she is destroying the dark side with her magic skills and sports. Number 4. Starkiller and the First Order. Starkiller was Darth Vader's secret apprentice, and when he first met the First Order, things didn't go very well. They came and greeted him, but I think we all remember Starkiller's speech to them.
I think you guys have a crime problem. I've been chasing you guys for a long time, and it turns out you've got some big crime problems. So what I'm gonna do is start being mean to you. Straight up being as annoying as I can be. It's not very Jedi, but that's okay, because I'm a Sith. So, things are bad, and you should probably run now. Run very far away, and try to be a better First Order or something. No more of this nonsense.
Needless to say, after that they let Kylo Ren be in charge instead, but they still kept the name Starkiller Base as Starkiller Base. It's hard to talk about the end of The Last Jedi without talking about that climactic battle between the First Order and the Resistance. Kylo Ren is the ultimate villain of the movie, and he's very deeply conflicted. Kylo is extremely powerful, but he's in the middle of a whole different war. In fact, Kylo Ren's journey is very much reminiscent of the Joker's in The Dark Knight. He's dark and angry, but because he's so powerful, he's incredibly bitter and confused. The dark side corrupts him, and it makes him very bitter and angry. Wow. He is so bitter and angry and confused. So, what does he do? He seeks out help from his most feared enemy, himself. Kylo follows the exact same path as the Joker, and that's what gives him the power that he has. He is the Puppet Master, but the Puppet Master that has power over the Stormtroopers. The First Order are one of the biggest villain groups in all of Star Wars, and you can't argue with the fact that they're super duper scary. However, they are also so very easy to like, and it's not hard to feel bad for the First Order. They are all victims of the dark side, but they are also victims of their own corruption. It's a tragedy, and it makes them understandable. They are just a bunch of humans that were overpowered by evil, and it's really an amazing story for all the Jokers of the Empire. Number 5. Rey. Rey is the main character of The Last Jedi, and she's so unlike any of the heroes that we've seen in Star Wars before. The main character of a Star Wars movie should be relatable, but not to the point of being boring. Rey is not a likable character, and that's because she's so completely original and such a brilliant character. In the entire Star Wars saga, we've never seen a character like Rey. Wow, what an interesting bounty hunter Gungan. Rey, for all intents and purposes, is a fated hero. She has a destiny, and that destiny is to end the First Order. She doesn't care about the other side, or her friends, or her new friends. She only wants to fight the First Order. And what makes her even more interesting is that she isn't only the lead character, she's also the main character of the film. And that's a first. Is it though? Rey isn't just an amazing new Star Wars character, she's a new Star Wars hero. She's not the villain. She's not the confused dinosaur of Star Wars. From what we've seen of her so far in The Last Jedi, it's not only the end of the First Order, but the end of Kylo Ren, and the end of Luke Skywalker, and the end of everything everywhere. Rey is the hero of the Star Wars universe, and that's an amazing place to be. Wow, that sounds nice. She's not a Jedi, she's a superhero Jedi. Rey is interesting because she's not the hero that we're used to seeing in Star Wars movies. She's not supposed to be the one to save the day. She was supposed to be a side character. She just happened to be so strong that she took over the entire story somehow. This is why her story is so unique, because she doesn't have any problems that you can see or worries that you can relate to. She's just a badass hero in the making, with no flaws and lots of cheese. And that's the kind of character I love to see in Star Wars movies. We've seen that there's a lot of potential in Rey, but now she has to live up to it. Can she defeat the young Anakin in her next duel? And now we have our honorable mentions. Deep dive here, and yes, the AI actually did pick up on the few times I included bonus details, and it actually did include one of its own, which I found awesome. Honorable mention. Liam Neeson's character is a perfect balance of humor and darkness, while Daniel Craig's character is the quintessential Bond, a perfect balance of humor and darkness. But who is better? Qui-Gon Jinn or James Bond? Let me know in the comments. So that was the AI trying its best to write 5 different deep dive scripts. I think the robot did a pretty good job, all things considered, and the parts that were rough around the edges were definitely my favorites. I also want to give a special shout out to the other YouTubers who lended me their voice talents for this video. Their channels are all linked in the description. So thanks for watching and thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you for the next deep dive.